Okay, so I'm going to take just a scrap sheet of paper and cut it down to where it fits and is the same size as my shape that I've painted on the front cover of my sketchbook. Okay, so now that I have a piece of paper that has been cut, just scrap paper, to the size of my space that I'm going to work in to add my quote, I'm going to set my book off to the side. And now I've got my quote in the document that I've made pulled up on my Kindle. You can do this on your phone so that way you can lay it flat on your table to draw. It's much easier to draw from a flat surface to a flat surface rather than trying to look up at a computer screen. You can do this on your phone. I just can't because I'm filming with my phone, so I'm going to use my Kindle instead. So I'm going to start by kind of just giving myself a rough guesstimation for, I've got really 4 lines of text, just sort of figuring out about how big they can be. And I'm going to give myself a rough underline. Now comes the sort of fun and tedious part. We are going to very lightly block in those letters, but we're going to keep it really loose and sketchy here to begin with. Don't be too tied to any particular shape. I'm not even really going to do all of the details on this first pass. I'm just going to give myself a very loose, somewhere in there. This is just kind of helping me figure out my spacing, and that's all. You can't even really read that well yet, but that's going to help me figure it out. Now I'm a little worried that I'm maybe not going to have enough room to fit in my paint on this last line, so I think what I may do is start from the end and work my way backwards. Yeah, because that's putting my A right underneath that Y, and those are really far off. So, no worries. I'm just going to pause, erase, and make my fonts a little bit smaller. Okay, that's better. Now I'm going to look at where this second line lines up. It should be right over the U. I guess maybe my lines are not quite lining up. I think I'd like to do something interesting though, where I can tell that the H and the G are gonna kind of overlap or be really close. I may visually scooch that over a little bit just because it's the way it's fitting on this paper. I may put the G on this side, but I may let those 2 letters overlap in a pretty way on my paper. Okay, that fits much better. It's got the kind of tapered edge that I want. Now I know that this is messy and this is very light and you can't really even read the words yet, but I've figured out kind of the placement to get them spaced. There's nothing worse than drawing out something and then realizing you're going great on this line, it's going great, and then you start to run out of room. And then things end up getting squished and crunched together. So mapping things out first in this way is really, really important. And so for Bob Ross, I'm gonna sketch that in. I'm gonna do that a little bit smaller. Once you have that finished, you're going to go back through and start to do some of the detail work, really cleaning up this picture and getting it to where it looks nice. Looking at my font has some thick and thin places. I'm going to try to capture that. And I'm also going to try to capture the kind of quality of each letter, where it's sort of bouncy and large open curves versus tight, sharper curves. Just really capturing the personality of that particular font. Now that you have your font laid out, the size with all the details that you want, now notice I did not even bother erasing that first underlayer drawing. I'm gonna leave that because it doesn't matter on this copy, but I do have everything with the details that I want to make this font as pretty as I can on my front cover. So the next thing that you're gonna do is flip it over onto the back and color this with just a pencil. And you're gonna color everywhere that there are words. And I kinda like to use the side of the pencil. But we're gonna make graphite transfer paper out of the back of this font. This doesn't have to be particularly neat. I'm just wanting to make sure that where there are words on the front, there's graphite on the back. Okay, so that looks pretty good, and now I'm gonna grab my sketchbook, and you can use any kind of tape that you have at home. I'm just gonna use some clear wrapping paper tape and tack this into place so that way it doesn't move. And I'm gonna get this lined up. I sort of think I've got a tiny bit too much space down here and not quite enough up there, so instead of lining it up exactly, I'm gonna scooch mine down just a smidge just to even that out. And just check and make sure that everything's where I want it. And then I'm just gonna tape that to my page. So now that I've got that there, I've got the graphite on the back, I am ready to create a drawing transfer onto my sketchbook cover. When I'm doing this, I try really hard to not use the side of my hand and press down really hard on this while I'm writing. I try to just let the point of the pencil. You can even do this in pen if you would like. A ballpoint pen works great for this too. But I like to try to make sure that I don't press down because my hand and that pressure can smudge some of that graphite off on the back. And I just want a really clean transfer. And I'm gonna just do this in a ballpoint pen just because I think it gives me a little bit more pressure. And now I'm gonna trace over my letters. And this tape is holding it in place, but you can kind of see if I lift up just that one like little side, I have a very light transfer onto that layer of my paint. I like to double check it as I go along to see if everything is transferring okay. If you see that it's not transferring dark enough, you need to try two things. Either apply more pressure with your writing tool as you transfer it, or it could be that you don't have enough graphite on the back for it to transfer well. Those are the two solutions in case you're running into problems. Once you're done, before you peel the whole thing up, I like to leave one side taped and just check the whole thing to make sure that it shows up. And that is how you can perfectly transfer your font onto the front of your sketchbook cover.